السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن نبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Brothers and sisters in Islam, in the story of Musa alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us many valuable lessons. We are taught in the Quran that the Bani Israel, after having been saved by Allah from Fir'aun, they were destined to wander the desert for 40 years. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, saying, فَإِنَّهَا مُحَرَّمَةٌ عَلَيْهِمْ 40 سَنَةً يَتِيهُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ, that the blessed land, the place that they were heading, because of their own actions, it was delayed, their entry was delayed. And the scholars in Islam, they point out that Musa alayhi salam, the great prophet who had stood firm against Fir'aun, had stood firm against the magicians, who had sacrificed so much for the sake of Allah and then to help his people. He never got to see them enter that blessed land. He actually passed away whilst they were wandering in the desert. And the scholars in Islam, they highlight here that it is possible sometimes that a person sows the seed. They sacrifice everything they have, only for future generations to reap the benefit of that sacrifice. And how often have we not seen it with our own eyes? Just with the Prophet ﷺ himself and the companions, the sacrifice that they went through on a daily basis, we as Muslims reap the benefit from that today. If it wasn't for the sacrifice and the hard work of those early companions, Islam might not have reached the places it reached. They took upon themselves that responsibility once the Prophet ﷺ passed away. They could have said, Medina is better for us. Let us stay in Medina and focus on ourselves and pray and worship Allah. But they didn't. They saw it as a responsibility, as something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would ask about on the Day of Judgment. What did you do with this message? How did you convey this message? One of the most interesting points in the entire seerah, especially for a community like ourselves, is that first hijrah that some of the companions made from Medina, from Mecca to Habasha. And the interesting part is how relatable it is to our situation. And we've touched on this many times before, but we'll repeat it. When the Muslims sought refuge with Al-Najashi, the king there, the Quraysh, they sent a party, a delegation after. And this party, this group of people, they had with them gifts. Why? To try to persuade Najashi to be on their side. If you give someone a gift, it is more likely that they will be in favor of your position. This is why, on a different topic, it is impermissible to give gifts to judges or people who have authority, especially when it's pertaining to your case, because that would be a form of bribery. Now, they spoke about the Muslims, and they misinformed Najashi the king. And once that happened, and the Muslims were summoned to the courts of the king, they realized that it was now or never, that they had to take charge of the narrative. And if you think about it, if you compare it to situations of Muslims in the West, it is very similar. Today we have people who speak on behalf of Islam and Muslims, and they say the things that we are opposed, the things that we are not. But the sad reality is, if we do not stand up for ourselves, who will stand up on our behalf? In the same way that when the king called for the Muslims, they listened and obeyed. They went. They didn't start quarreling and arguing among themselves. They knew that this was important. Not only that, but they chose one person to speak. Imagine today, a small community. Everyone wants to speak on behalf of their Muslim community. What would have happened if this had taken place in front of the king? If someone says, no, I know more knowledge than you, sit down. No, I have a PhD, you sit down. No, I speak Arabic, you sit down. This is not the way for a community to behave. And that early generation, they realized that. So when Ja'far radiallahu anhu stood up, he told his people, he said, I will be the khatib today. I will be the one that speaks. None of the companions opposed him, and they let him speak. And one of the things that is highlighted was that when the Quraysh came with their delegation to the king, they had a custom that they would make sujood in front of the king. They would prostrate in front of the king to show honor. And the Quraysh, being mushrikeen, they had no problems with this. So when they came, they made a sujood in front of the king. But when the Muslims came, they went in, they greeted the king in a respectful manner, but they did not make sujood to the king. And the king noticed, and he said, why do you not make sujood? And then they explained. Compare it today to the Muslim situation. Sometimes we try so hard to please other people to please people who might not have the best interests of Islam and Muslims at heart. Whereas, if we follow in the footsteps of the companions, that is when you have true honor. The king didn't tell them to be, and this is the nature of people, that if you see a person who stands up for something, has values, even if those values contradict your own values, you respect that person on a certain level, because they stood firm on what they believed. Now the Muslims, they spoke. Ja'far radiallahu anhu spoke. And this is not the first time that you see Muslims speaking on behalf of Muslims for the betterment of Muslims. But yet, again, if we look and compare to our Muslim community, or Muslims community in general in the West, we've become so focused on our daily lives. If I ask any one of us, including myself, what does your daily routine entitle? What do you do on a daily basis? For many of us, it is the same routine. We wake up, eat, meet people, work, come back home, and then we repeat, go back to sleep, day in and day out. And like we said in the previous khutbah, there is more to life than just eating and sleeping and socializing. People who are millionaires, billionaires, where money is not a problem anymore, they highlight the importance of leaving behind a legacy. They work so hard in order to make a difference. Because this is the purpose of life. The purpose of life is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how do you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? By being in the service of His creation. Not just mankind, but even animals and plants. This is the Islam that the Prophet ﷺ taught us. Now the point that we made in the previous khutbah is that if you look at a cross-section of the community, you realize that the community here in Victoria, mashallah, alhamdulillah, are very well educated. Very well educated. Many of you, not only do you have degrees, but you might have PhDs, masters, and so on. And for those of you that might not have it, you are very driven, you're passionate people. And I am not just an imam standing in front of you saying that, but when you travel and people that have been in Victoria, they testify to the same thing. But there is a discrepancy. If you look at how educated this community is, and how involved we are with the wider community, there is something wrong. Because I believe firmly in my heart that if we as a community contributed to the wider society, you would see a difference. If you ask how many people in this community have children, many people will raise their hands. Alhamdulillah, blessing. Not only do we have one child, but we have children. Some of us have grandchildren. But if you ask any parent, how active are you in your child's education? How active are you at the school that your children attends? For many of us, the only part that we perform as parents is we drop them off and pick them back up. We don't ask them how your school was. We do not engage with them. Now, this is just one section, the schooling. How many other sections go without Muslim participation? And by that I mean, You do not have to wear a big banner saying, I am Muslim, I represent Islam. No. But at least if you're engaged, perhaps you can bring some wisdom to that part. And the best way to become engaged is to find something that you are passionate about. People around us, once they retire, this is the main thing that they focus on. Even before retirement, their Saturdays and Sundays, their evenings, their weekends, they have a project, they have a passion that they sacrifice their sleep over. But if you ask Muslims today, there is no such thing. We live for the weekend. We can't wait until Friday comes. And even then, we don't spend it with our family. We want to spend it alone. So the point that I was trying to make in the previous khutbah, which most likely will take some time, is that we need to engage more. And yes, on a social level, but also beyond that, we need to make sure that Muslims' voices are heard. Do you know what the previous generation, when I was growing up, what they used to do? They used to sit and watch the news at a cafe. And they used to get angry and upset of what they see, especially if it was a local issue. And they would sit and they would drink their tea, and they would drink their coffee, and they would go back and forth about how bad the situation was. A year passed, 2 years, 5, 6, 10 years. No one stood up to make a difference. No one challenged the situation. Let us not make the same mistake that many generations before us have made. That we take matters into our own hands. That we try to make that difference. But it is about changing a mentality. For us, we're too comfortable to sit back. Even this khutbah itself, many people will say, this imam is too ambitious. This imam wants the impossible. الحمد لله على إحسانه وشكر له على توفيقه وامتنانه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له تعظيما لشأنه وأشهد أن نبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. جاء رجل إلى عالم وقال له، وهذا العالم كان جالس عند طلابه يشرح كتاب صحيح البخاري. فقال الرجل للعالم: الناس في الغرب وصلوا إلى القمر. الناس في الغرب وصلوا إلى القمر، وأنتم ما زلتم تقرؤون في هذا الكتاب. فقال العالم: أنت أصبحت الآن المفلس الوحيد الحقيقي. وكيف هذا؟ قال له: لا وصلت القمر معه ولا جلست معنا لتطلب العلم. And the scholar, he replied, he said, you are the one that truly lost out. You are the one that is at a loss. How so? He said, you did not travel with these people to the moon, nor did you sit with us to seek the knowledge. And this is the reality of many of us, that we like to complain, but we don't like to put in effort. Two men entered a room, a dark room, without any light. One complained, and he started cursing the darkness. The other person, he entered the same room, same darkness, and instead of complaining and cursing, he tried to figure out a way to turn on the light, to make the electricity work, to light a candle. What we need to do, brothers and sisters, we need to be the second type of person. That it is easy to complain. Everyone loves to complain, but few of us love to engage for a better future. ثم اعلموا أيها المؤمنون أن الله أمركم بأمر بدأ به بنفسه وثنى بملائكة قدسه وثلث بكم أيها المؤمنون من جن وإنس قد قال الله تبارك وتعالى إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وارض اللهم عن خلفائه الأربعة أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي وعن سائر الصحابة ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وعنا معهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين يا رب العالمين. اللهم اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين. اللهم اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين.